In the winter of 2025, police radios in upstate New York carried a message that would ripple far beyond the county line. On February 13th, 2025, a call came in from a field near a quiet stretch of rural Yates County. Deputies from the New York State Police responded. What they found was later confirmed to be the remains of a missing 24-year-old man named Sam Nordquist. Sam had been reported missing 4 days earlier, on February 9th, after his family in Minnesota lost contact with him. He was known among friends for his easy humor, his love of animals, and for being open about his identity as a transgender man. His disappearance had first drawn attention on social media, then in regional press bulletins. When the confirmation came, the headlines were brief, but the shock was deep. Another young life lost. Another trans person whose story ended far from home. Investigators quickly realized that the case would test every layer of the justice system. 5 people were soon charged with second-degree murder with depraved indifference. They were held without bail as detectives pieced together what had happened in the months before Sam's death. At a press conference, Captain Kelly Swift of the New York State Police summarized the findings with flat, professional calm. Sam Nordquist was subjected to repeated acts of violence and torture in a manner that ultimately led to his death. Those words, repeated acts of violence, echoed through newsrooms and advocacy groups nationwide. For many, they carried an unbearable familiarity. The district attorney, Jim Ritz, described the circumstances as beyond depraved. His statement drew a clear line between ordinary criminality and something darker, a sustained degradation of a human being. But amid the legal terminology, another truth emerged. Sam was more than a case file. He was a son, a friend, and part of a community already carrying the weight of disproportionate violence. The Human Rights Campaign had recorded at least 33 violent deaths of transgender and gender nonconforming people in the United States during 2024 alone. Advocates warned that many more likely went unreported or were misidentified. Sam's death would become one of the first of 2025, another statistic in a pattern that activists have spent years trying to make visible. Reporters who spoke with Sam's family described him as devastated but determined. They emphasized that Sam's identity was central to who he was, but not the sum of his life. They wanted him remembered for his resilience and kindness, not solely for the way he died. As forensic teams worked the scene, local residents began leaving candles at the county courthouse. The small gestures of grief reflected something larger, a quiet recognition that this killing was not isolated. It was part of a broader struggle for recognition, respect, and safety. Authorities confirmed that no hate crime charge had yet been filed. Investigators stated that evidence so far did not indicate biased motivation, but advocacy groups urged prosecutors to keep the door open as more facts emerged. They argued that when a trans person is dehumanized, motive cannot be separated from identity so easily. In televised interviews, legal analysts explained that depraved indifference murder under New York law carries the same potential sentence as intentional murder, up to life in prison, reflecting the extreme cruelty alleged. As the hearings began, a portrait of overlapping relationships came into view. The defendants knew each other. Some knew Sam. The district attorney's office said publicly that the abuse spanned weeks, possibly months. Yet behind every procedural update, the human cost kept surfacing. Community centers across Rochester and Syracuse organized vigils, reading Sam's name alongside others lost to anti-LGBTQ+ violence. Social media posts carried the tag Justice for Sam, urging the public to resist apathy. National commentators reflected on a pattern too long ignored. In the last decade, the United States has witnessed a rise in anti-trans rhetoric, both online and in political discourse. Experts from the Southern Poverty Law Center have repeatedly warned that such rhetoric can fuel dehumanization, which in turn lowers the threshold for real-world violence. In that context, Sam's killing became more than a local tragedy. It symbolized the intersection of personal vulnerability, systemic bias, and institutional failure. Speaking at a memorial, Pastor Ella Michaels, who runs an inclusive church in downtown Rochester, told mourners, "Sam came here believing that truth and kindness were enough to keep him safe. We owe it to him to make that belief true for the next person." The line was repeated by national outlets, a rare moment where compassion cut through the usual media noise. The investigation, meanwhile, continued in painstaking detail. Evidence recovered from digital devices, text messages, and surveillance footage began to outline the months leading to Sam's disappearance. Detectives traced his last known communications to an apartment complex in Ontario County, roughly 30 miles from where his body was found. Prosecutors filed motions outlining a narrative of captivity and prolonged harm, though they refrained from disclosing specifics. What mattered now was proof, careful, methodical, courtroom-ready proof. For investigators, the case posed both logistical and emotional challenges. One detective, speaking to local television under condition of anonymity, said, "We see terrible things in this line of work, but some cases stay with you. This one will." In March 2025, a grand jury upheld the murder charges. Each defendant pleaded not guilty. Defense attorneys argued that evidence had been misinterpreted, that the full story had not yet been told. But for Sam's loved ones, the essential story was already clear. A young man had been trapped in circumstances no one should endure. The legal details mattered, but the moral weight was undeniable. Across social networks, trans advocates began linking Sam's case to ongoing efforts for stronger federal hate crime enforcement and mental health support for displaced youth. Commentators noted that many trans people face housing insecurity and rely on online relationships for connection, a context that can sometimes expose them to danger. These discussions, while painful, reflected a collective determination to ensure that Sam's name became a catalyst for change, not another fading headline. By April, the story had drawn international coverage. Outlets in the United Kingdom and Europe framed it within the broader conversation about global trans rights. Editorials contrasted Sam's vulnerability with the resilience of a community still demanding to be seen. What began as a missing person report in upstate New York has become a marker of how societies value, or fail to value, the lives of transgender people. Our hearts are broken, but we thank everyone who continues to say his name. We hope the truth will come fully to light. Sam wanted to live honestly. That should never be a risk. The coming months would test whether the legal system could meet that truth with accountability. And for those who followed the case, one question remained. In a world that asks the marginalized to prove their worth again and again, what does justice really look like?